Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Attitude Magazine's ADHD Experts broadcast. We are pleased to have expert Susan Kruger here to talk about beefing up students' executive functions for a smoother, more successful school year. Before we get started, let me note a couple of housekeeping items. Those of you tuned in to the live webinar may download the slides now by clicking on the Event Resources section of your webinar screen. And if you are interested in the Certificate of Attendance option, look for instructions in the email you'll receive around an hour after the live broadcast. For those of you listening in replay or podcast mode, you can visit attitudemag.com and search Podcast 368 to access the slides, the webinar replay, and the Certificate of Attendance option. If you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for Attitude Magazine for your family or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater understanding of ADHD. And the sponsor of this week's Attitude webinar is Endeavor RX. Endeavor RX is the first and only treatment delivered through a video game indicated to improve attention function in children 8 to 12 years old. Classified as a prescription digital therapeutic, Endeavor RX is engineered to improve attentional control by strengthening focus, interference processing, and multitasking through an engaging play experience. Designed as a personalized treatment, Endeavor RX adapts in real time and between treatment sessions for each child's level, continuously challenging and encouraging them to improve their performance. If your child has ADHD and is struggling with attention and focus, Endeavor RX may be a great addition to your child's current treatment plan. For more information, go to Endeavor, and to also learn about the science behind Endeavor RX, go to www.endeavorrx.com. Attitude thanks our sponsors for supporting our webinars. Sponsorship has no influence on speaker selection or webinar content. Now for today's topic. As the new school year approaches, or in many cases has already begun, parents and students are reeling from the chaos of remote and hybrid learning from last year. But now is the perfect time to reset and adjust for a more peaceful and successful year ahead. In this webinar, learning specialist Susan Kruger will cover tactical hacks for overcoming disorganization and removing everyday burdens on parents and students by strengthening executive functions. Susan is a mom of two dynamic and wonderful children with ADHD who manages quote-unquote ADHD mornings every day. She is also a certified learning specialist and author of the international best-selling study skills book, SOAR Study Skills. Her other books include Homework Help for Parents, Cue to Reading, SOAR Social Emotional Learning, and developed the breakthrough models, the brain circuit and the ADHD circuit. Her curriculum materials are used by over 4,000 schools across the U.S. and 45 countries worldwide. You can ask questions of Susan during her presentation, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can after she is done. So with all that being said, I'll turn it over to Susan. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you. It is a pleasure it is always a pleasure, I should say, to join Attitude Magazine. I have used your publication many times myself. I refer a lot of people. You have wonderful information, and so I am glad to contribute to this. So welcome to everyone. Thank you for those of you who are attending and those who will be joining later via the recording. The first thing I want to let you know is I am an ADHD mother with an ADHD husband with two ADHD children. We don't have our lives down perfect, and I don't want to come across as though I have perfection mastered. I always tell my kids, that we aim for 80%. And we actually do better, I think, than 80%. But, the 80-20 rule says that perfection is not really attainable. And so if we can aim for just being successful 80% of the time, we're doing really good. And I tell you, actually, when you aim for that, you do actually do better. But then when you have those 20% times, we just learn to laugh about it and roll it off our backs. And what can we learn from this? And let's move on. So everything I'm about to share with you, I'd like to just share in that context of let's do our best, but let's not worry about perfection. So to get started, I have a question for you. What do these items have in common? And let me get the first one up here. We have the Q for a line. We have those little 3 bubbles on texting when you can see that someone is replying to you. We have a calendar. And the next item is a chore chart. And I'll give you a second to think, what could all of these things have in common? Well, the answer to this is that they all make the invisible visible. And this is what we are aiming for. This is really the key to success in executive function, I think, for everybody, but certainly is essential for people with ADHD. And so everything that I am going to share with you today are tips and strategies that ultimately make the invisible visible. But I share this philosophy with you, or this lens with you, because this can be something that you can keep your eyes open for, and just look for the ways that you can make the invisible visible in your life and for the benefit of your child. Everybody wins when we can make more of the invisible visible. So let's get started with the first thing that I have to share with you. And this is morning magnets. I believe I did an article on this for Attitude a couple years ago. So if you search for some of the things I've written, you'll find some more details about this. But I have an example on the screen, and I'm not sure how big the screen is for anyone who's viewing. It's a little small for my viewing, but I'll explain what's going on here. And first of all, I'll explain what the purpose of it is. As we were getting started, I saw a question about daughter starting 10th grade. So, and the question was specifically about mornings. So I will address your question in a little more detail, but this is a strategy that I would encourage you to think about for your child. We use this. My son is now going into 11th grade. My daughter is going into 7th. And we've been using this for many years. In fact, the sample that I have on the screen here has little pictures drawn on it because we were using this back when my daughter could not read. So basically, the idea is every single magnet that you see represents something that needs to be done in the morning. The eating of breakfast, the putting dishes away, the brushing of teeth. My daughter is always needing a reminder about socks, no matter what the weather is outside. So she has a separate magnet, one for socks and one for shoes, because those actually are 2 different categories, for her. So you basically create one magnet for each of those little items that needs to be done. And I'll focus on the one on the left first, because this is just for morning. And this hangs on the refrigerator. And they just have to move when they've completed a task. They move the magnet from one side over to the other. So and I'm not even sure what each of these say, so forgive me if you can see it better than I can. But if one says breakfast, once they've eaten breakfast, they'll move it over to the other side. The socks, once the socks are on their feet, they can move the magnet. Once they've taken their meds, they can move the magnet over to the other side. So the idea is that it's making all those morning tasks that are so difficult for those of us with ADHD to do. Even though they're routine and we do them every day, there's still a challenge. This makes each of those tasks visible. And then once the magnets have all migrated over to the other side, then all we need to do is simply just leave them there for that day. And then the next day they move them back. So it's just a constant switching back and forth. Excuse me. The sample on the right, we extended it into after school and bedtime. And I'll be honest, in our family, we didn't use these magnets quite as much, but for the morning time, that has just been a lifesaver. And something, like I said, it transcends all age levels and years. The thing I've discovered is that no one argues with magnets. So when you say to your kids, did you do your magnets? Did you do your magnets? Of course, I still have to say that a lot every morning, but I now don't have to be keeping track of this laundry list of morning chores that needs to be done, even if they're personal chores. This is no longer my responsibility to keep track of all these little things. Did you brush your teeth? Did you get your socks? Instead, all I have to do is just remind them to go to the magnets. Did you do all your magnets? Did you do all your magnets? And so the beautiful thing again is then it puts the responsibility on them to take care of each of these things, but it's also providing them with structure that allows them to be supported in this particular strategy. To go a little bit deeper on the question that I see here, because it is related, it's just about a daughter being in 10th grade. And I'm going to just shorten it up a little bit, but just wondering if mornings, if the parents should be stepping back and letting the child manage the mornings on her own. And I know exactly where that advice is coming from. I've received it myself. My son has just completed 10th grade, and I'm guessing from your question that that's not what your child needs. If your child needs support, we have to give our children support. People on the outside don't understand ADHD, but if you have a child that doesn't have a leg, you would give that child a prosthetic. We would never think twice about not giving that child a prosthetic if we could. If our child cannot do mornings, we have to give them support. So the magnets are one tool that can allow your child at any age to be a little more independent. I understand the nature of the question was a little bit more about getting the child up in the morning. And if I can give you some encouragement, 1 year ago today, I was still having to get my child up every morning as we were going into 10th grade. And this last year, even despite all the chaos that COVID brought, there was like a switch flipped, and now my son is taking a lot more personal responsibility in that department. I honestly believe it's a biology thing, and he finally had all the neurons come together that are allowing him to be more successful in that department. I wouldn't say he's 100%, so I am still kind of the backup, but he is taking more ownership of that. So I would just encourage you to provide the support that your child needs, but look for ways that you can transfer more and more responsibility over to your child so that we're setting them up for success and not just creating a system or a situation of that's ultimately going to set them up to not be successful. We want to avoid that. All right, so I'll move on from here to a system that we always refer to as the SOAR binder. And basically, I want to be very clear that this is not any special tool that I sell or anything. It's just a system that is part of our curriculum that we share with schools. So the idea of this system is that students in school they're typically asked to carry a separate folder and a separate notebook for each of their classes. And if a student has 6 classes, then that means that they are responsible for carrying 6 notebooks, 6 folders. That's 12 different items. And when you stack them on top of each other in a locker or in a backpack, these items all look alike. And then if you think about the number of transitions that our children have to manage, or our students, our young adults have to manage between getting these items from school to home for homework, then from home back to school, then to their locker, then to each of their classes. It's a tremendous amount of complexity that we're asking our students to manage. So what we recommend is that students just put all of their folders and notebooks into one binder. Now, what you're looking at in the screen right now is a 1-inch binder. You can go up to 1.5 inches if you need to put a pencil pouch in there. That's particularly important for schools that don't allow backpacks into the classroom. Then a 1.5-inch binder is good for storing pencils and writing utensils and stuff. How this works is you use plastic folders like you see in the screen. One folder for each subject. And then instead of spiral notebooks, because if we all have experienced this, where you get to the end of a semester or an end of a school year, and there's usually dozens and dozens of blank pages in the notebook at the end of the year. So instead of carrying around those bulky spiral notebooks, students just keep a stack of loose leaf notebook paper in the back of their binder. They take notes on that paper, and then they can just anytime they're taking notes, they can just pop the sheet of paper into their binder behind the subject folder. So the subject folders double as a subject divider as well. Excuse me. I want to be clear, because sometimes when I share this strategy, people start hole punching papers to put in the binder. That adds a layer of complexity that I'm not endorsing. If papers come pre-hole punched, fine, but that's what the pocket folder is for. So any papers that the student needs to keep track of for a specific class go in that particular subject folder. Papers that they want to take home or that they need to take home that need their attention will go in that front pocket. And so you can't really see that label very well on that front pocket of the binder, but that's a take home that says, we'll say either take home or to do. So that's another way that we kind of help students streamline everything, is that throughout the school day, as they're collecting homework sheets that will need their attention when they get home, they can keep them all in that one folder, and then it'll be a lot easier for them to find everything when they get home. When they complete the assignment, then they can easily just slide the assignment into their subject folder. When students are at home doing their homework, I encourage them to use that binder as a lap desk, because something happens when anytime students are working on homework, they're usually in a rush to just get it done. So that whether they are conscious of it or not, there's that undercurrent going in their brain that's just, come on, let's get this done, let's get this done. So the second they put that last drop of ink on their sheet of paper, there's this unconscious done button that gets pressed in their head, and they just kind of, in their mind, they're done with that assignment. So one other thing that I coach students about when I'm getting them set up with a binder is you're not done until the paper gets put away into the binder. So I'm trying to coach them on, don't click that done button in your brain until the sheet of paper is in your folder. But if they are using the binder as a lap desk and they have it right there, then it's just a matter of turning a couple of folders to find the right folder and slide their homework in. So this is tremendously helpful for students across grade levels. Some people worry that a 1-inch binder won't fit everything. I've never run into that. I've been teaching this now for 20 years. I've never had anybody complain of that. I used it myself as a student from middle school all the way through college. I never ran into that. I do recommend that you keep a place at home where you can take out papers maybe from old units that the student doesn't need to be carrying around, but maybe they might want to reference for a final exam. But a 1-inch binder will hold everything. If you want to include a pencil pouch, then go up to 1.5 inch. For children who are in elementary school who might be seeing only one teacher, the binder itself might not be as useful as, basically, I'll just say the rule of thumb is the binder is the perfect solution for any student who is changing classes and seeing different teachers. So that typically that's middle school and high school, maybe even upper elementary. For lower elementary, the same principle applies, is just try to limit the materials that need to go back and forth between homes. So if there's one take-home folder that the child is using instead of multiple different folders or notebooks, that can be tremendously helpful for younger children. And what we're doing here is we are just making this chaos now that's all of the order and organization gets lost in here when you've got a pile of 12 different folders and notebooks. Now through the binder, we're making that order much more visible and much more accessible to the student. Now they only have one thing that they have to carry with them across all of those transitions, not 12. Because of course, they always are running into the situation where they'll show up to math class with what they thought was their math notebook, but turns out to be their science notebook, or same type of situation when they get home. So all of that is eliminated when students can transfer all of their materials down to one binder. So moving on to the next strategy here. Let's just talk about digital files. Certainly the needs of digital organization became very apparent to the whole world last year. And whether your child is continuing with virtual learning or not, digital files are a tool they have to manage, and they need to know how to manage it well. So what I recommend and they will need specific instruction on how to manage this. This is one thing I've noticed. There's a gap in our role as parents and educators in helping our children manage the digital files. Nobody ever sat down and taught us this, so I think we forget that we have an opportunity to teach our kids this so they don't have to learn the hard way. With digital files, I'm always encouraging students to just sort of follow the same type of organization as they do with the binder. And what I mean by that is we could go crazy creating folders, and we could just have, we can just go down, create folders within folders within folders. We can over organize. So the system that I share with students is just one digital folder for the school year, and we want to name it with the school year. And then, so example, this coming school year, the primary digital folder would be 2021-22. And that one folder is sort of the equivalent to one binder. We only have one binder for the school year. We only need one digital folder for the school year. Inside the binder, we only have one folder for each subject. That's all we need here with our digital files is one folder for each subject. So sometimes it's a simple thing that I'm sharing here, but this is just making the instruction a little more explicit for students so that they can wrap their brain around what to do with their digital files. I'm actually going into my third year of virtual learning with my kids. We did sort of a hybrid, we were doing a hybrid program before the pandemic hit. And this is one area where I have been wanting to put, or I have had moments where I want to pull my hair out because we can't find their files. So I've discovered through that own, my own experience, they need this specific instruction. And if you set this up at the beginning of the school year, at the same time that you get them set up with a binder system or a take-home folder, of course, if you're using take-home folder, your elementary kids might not need this as much. But if you set it up at the same time, they'll see the connection. And again, it's making that invisible order visible to them, and then they'll know where to put their files as they're creating different assignments and so forth throughout the school year. Now we'll move on to email. And again, I know this is a little bit oriented towards digital, but this is another area where I am finding students, whether they are in in-person learning or they are in a hybrid or in virtual, email is an important part of the educational process. Teachers more and more are relying on students to check and use their email. Schools are using email to communicate directly to, of course, schools are bombarding us as parents with all of the email as well, but they are sending things directly to the students. And we need to be showing our students that the email inbox is not a storage location. Just about every student that I have seen, they have hundreds or thousands of emails in their inbox, and they don't understand that there is more they can do with their email. So this is something that takes a little bit of time to walk your students through. But what I'm going to give you is an acronym to help you. And this has been tremendously helpful for me working through email with my own children and with some of the kids in their classes. So first of all, show them how to bookmark the email login. That's a really important piece because one of the reasons why students don't check their email is they don't know how to find it, and they don't have the brain power to dig through things to find the email login. So help them by having that email login bookmarked. And then set up email labels to match their digital files, or again, to match their folders in the binder. So one label per subject. And then to process email, there's an acronym that I call lattes, and I'll go through this in just a second. First thing I want to emphasize, though, is that there's a difference between checking email and processing email, and that is something that we need to make sure that we talk about with our children is checking email is what we do on our mobile devices. We see what comes in. We see if anything needs our urgent attention. Processing email is going a layer deeper and translating things to calendar events, archiving things we don't need, labeling something we might need for a class, and so forth. So here we go. Here's the acronym. And the other thing I emphasize with the students is that there are only 6 options for any email message. I'm using terminology from Gmail. So if you're using a different email service, or if your child's school is using a different email service, these terms might be slightly different, but you'll understand at least the function. The first thing is to label. And by the way, I'll let you know that I wrote this acronym out on an index card, on a large index card, kind of like about this size, and slid this index card into the back cover of my kid's binder. So if you get a binder with the view covers that you can slide things into, this was in the back. And when I sat down with them and went through email a few times, just the two of us together, but we would just be referencing this. These are your 6 options. Which one of these options apply to this email? And this was tremendously helpful. So the next option is to archive. I encourage students, at least with Gmail, to archive versus delete, because we have virtually unlimited storage, and you never know when something you think you don't need now might end up being really useful in the future. So as a general rule, I encourage archiving over deleting. If you feel differently, by all means, you can coach differently. Then the 2-minute rule, and that is, if you can resolve this email in under 2 minutes, in 2 minutes or less, then go ahead and take care of it right now. If you can't take care of it in under 2 minutes, then convert it to a task. There's a little button in Gmail that you can take an email and flip it right into a task. If it is a calendar invite, then it might need to be converted to an event. If it's something you just don't know what to do with, you're not sure how to deal with it right now, you don't think you should archive it, but maybe you should keep this on your radar, then you can snooze it and have it come back to you in a few days or a few weeks. So these are the 6 options for email. And this is tremendously helpful for students to understand. First of all, they just honestly do not know that the inbox is not their storage place, so this allows the students to process their email so that anything that really does continue to need their attention stays in the inbox and is a little easier for them to find. All right. And then the last thing I have to share with you is a digital dashboard. And I think this will address the question a little bit about, I see a question about communicating and engaging with the schedule for the day, for the week, and long term. And so this is something that can be very helpful. Essentially what it is turning the calendar into a dashboard. So most schools now are having students use email systems, especially after COVID. And so most email systems come with a calendar. And what I'm displaying on the screen is the interface for Google Calendar. And what I ended up doing here, this was again out of desperation, out of the hundreds of emails that would come at me from the school, would come at my kids from the school. Again, whether you're digital or whether you're not, there's still digital tools, or fully digital, I should say, if you're whether you're in person or virtual, you still have digital tools that you need to manage. You have schedules you need to manage. And I was going crazy with all these different things coming at me. So I will say this one takes a little bit of time to set up, but the sanity that it saved us throughout the school year was completely worth it. This was something that we set on each of my kids' calendars. This was not on my calendar. I did not want to have this cluttering up my calendar. But what you see on Sunday are purple items. These items are things, first of all, everything that you're seeing on the screen right now is a recurring event except for the item in gold. The item in gold here is from the annual calendar. So we put the annual calendar for the school in, and we put it on a different calendar. So you can create different calendars for, at least for Google Calendar. We created a separate one just for the annual calendar. And then the items that are in purple are tools that the students need to access. These could be software tools. These might be resources for people at the school. For example, there's a learning lab at the school that our kids can attend, but there's a sign-up link for it. So we put the sign-up link into one of these tabs up here, and these are all set as recurring events. So when you click on one of these little buttons, it pops open and it has the live link to the Learning Lab sign-up page. It has the Learning Lab hours. If there's any, for example, counselor information for students to get in touch with their counselor, We have that set here as one of these recurring items. And this just shows up every day or every week on Sunday. We did create this as a different calendar so that we could have the different colors, just so that we can very quickly identify that these are not events. These are they're not events that we need to pay attention to for our schedule, but according to the calendar, we have them set as recurring events. The items that are in these 15-minute recurring events here, these are buttons to different software tools. So I just set items up at the top here that were resources that were more information about the school or people at the school. We set this up as half-hour events, and then items for accessing software were here in these 15-minute increments. A little disclaimer, you don't want to put passwords in these things here. A calendar is not a secure place to put passwords. I do recommend a password manager. You can find some for free that usually they have a limit to the amount of passwords that you store, but for students managing school, a free password manager is probably going to be sufficient. So one of these links here is to the password manager as well. But we do have in each of these little tabs, when you click on and open it up, there's a live link to the software login, and then there's a little hint about what the password is. So if the student doesn't have to be clicking through to the password manager to find their password every time, that is, of course, very helpful. But that we don't want to be putting the password in there. So some hints that only you or your child would know are a helpful little thing to put in these little tabs. The items in blue here for my children, these are their subject areas. And last year we were going pretty crazy with Zoom links. So we ended up putting the teacher's contact information, their email, and their Zoom link in during the time that they were scheduled to meet with their teacher. And again, that just is a recurring event. So no matter what week you're on with the calendar, those items will pop open and have all the information that you need. Anything that a teacher might have, certain things you might find on a syllabus, like their specifications for how to turn assignments in, or some of their policies, anything like that could also be things that you copy and paste into each of these recurring events for each class, whether they are digital or whether they are in person. This calendar really serves to organize all of those tools for children. And then back to the question about communicating and engaging with the schedule, then you can be sharing events with your child on their calendar. But I also recommend that you go just a little bit further than just using the digital dashboard. There is a routine that I highly recommend, and that is Sunday night meeting. And that's one of the reasons why I put these dashboard items on Sunday. It's just sort of an anchor day to prompt us to just take a couple minutes and organize ourselves. So with your family, it's taking a few minutes, ideally on Sunday, but sometimes you might not remember until Monday, but just that natural time as you're preparing for the week, and just ask everyone, what do you have coming up this week? And let me tell you what I have coming up this week. And so that's an opportunity to just make sure everybody knows what to expect. If you can take a peek ahead to the week in the future, just for anything that might be waiting around the corner that needs your attention, perhaps even the following Sunday. It only takes about 5 minutes to do this. It is a system, or I should say a routine that is so simple. Sometimes people overlook the power of it. But one thing that does, and so basically what I'm referring to a routine that you develop with your family, but then also a tool that you can use to center everyone around the same information with this digital dashboard. It's just, when you take that time at the beginning of the week to share each other's schedules, it creates more of a conversation and your child perceives it a little bit more as a conversation than nagging. And that is something that, when I'm doing a live presentation with both parents and students in the room, I'll ask, how many of you think that your parents nag you too much? And just about every hand in the place will go up. And then I'll ask the students, how many of you think that your parents enjoy nagging? And all the hands will stay up. And parents are often quite shocked to see that their child perceives that they enjoy nagging, because of course we hate it. So having a a time at the beginning of the week where everyone's just talking about what's coming ahead, that does a lot throughout the week to reduce that sense of nagging, just because everybody's had more of an equal conversation about what to expect. That doesn't mean that things don't come up last minute, but it definitely reduces the amount of last minute chaos that we're trying to manage. So that's the main thing to share about the digital dashboard, is that you can set up each of these events or each of these items as recurring events. I should add that anything then that needs the child's attention, that is a schedule oriented thing that's not recurring, then that would go in yellow. So I probably should have chosen a better screenshot for this, where there are a few more yellow items on, then right away the yellow items stand out and the student knows to identify what's a little out of the ordinary and what might be a change to their schedule. But otherwise, the recurring classes are in blue, and the access to the information that children need for software, for counselors and other people at the school in a different color here, all posted on Sunday. And then, by the way, if you don't want these items to show up, you can just unclick the calendar and take it off, so that you can see the calendar a little more clearly. But if you use the colors correctly, then you can see what needs your attention that might be out of the ordinary, and leave all the items that really are just truly recurring in a different color, and everyone can see what they're managing. So that is the conclusion of what I have prepared for you. I know we're going to turn over to questions. We have a lot of information on our websites at studyskills.com and selskills.com. And that's where you can find some of our resources and additional strategies.
Okay, great. That was excellent. Loads of specific questions about each one of these systems. With the magnets, is there a reward for completion?
I have not used a reward for completion. Personally, I would find that really hard for myself to keep track of and maintain. But I don't see any harm in having a reward. Mm-hmm. So I would say that's a personal choice.
Okay. One parent says she likes the magnet idea, but what if the child lies about doing the chore, moves the magnet, but doesn't really do the chore? Did you run into that with your children?
I have never intentionally. I have had a very rare occasion where they think they've done something and move the magnet. But that's where the 80-20 rule comes into play. I really do try to emphasize with my kids, we're doing our best. And we are going to make those, silly little mistakes. So as far as lying about it, I mean, if they get to school and they don't have their lunch, or they get to school and they don't have their socks, most of the consequences of not getting those things done are going to fall on them pretty quickly. So I don't foresee that to be much of a challenge, but you have to be willing to let them feel that consequence one or two times, really to reinforce if you find them falling into that pattern.
Mm-hmm. Lots of people saying, where can I get these magnets? Now, you said make them yourself. So a lot of people have asked, can I buy them somewhere?
I made them. I have not found them pre-made. Maybe they do exist, but I feel that it's kind of a hard thing to find pre-made, because everybody has just slightly different routines that they need to take care of in the morning. And we all have different ways of talking about them, or different words we might use, or like the example I shared earlier with my daughter in particular, who, I could not put shoes and socks together on the same magnet, because guaranteed she'd get to school with no socks. So, you kind of need to be able to customize them a little bit, but it's not hard to find magnets on Amazon, just flat surface and a permanent marker. And it doesn't take much time at all to put it together. I just then bought a magnet board and colored tape.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not hard to put together, but I do recommend, actually one thing, it's a good question. One thing that we did do in the beginning was I put a file folder on the fridge, and I used small little Post-it notes with things written on them. And we just tested that out for a couple of days before I put the tape in place on the magnet board, and before I drew up all the magnets, just to make sure that it was all going to work. So you could do a trial one, but I was also trying, I didn't have a template to get me started. I was pulling it from my head.
Right,
So that might not be necessary. I've got a template for you that I just shared. So
considering several parents have said, don't the kids just ignore the magnets after a while, considering the ADHD craving for novelty? Did you find that?
Well, yeah, they will. Now I'm going on, I've been using this for many years. It's just, you have to move your magnets. So they're not 100% independent with it, even after all these years. It's me standing there saying, move your magnets. Did you get all your magnets done? But it's the tool that we use. And there are days that they're just not moved. And for whatever reason, maybe I woke up late, or maybe I was in a bad mood or something. But again, if we go for 80-20, that's what we're looking for. It doesn't solve every morning problem. It's not a 100% perfect solution, but it's a huge, huge relief and puts the onus of control more in the hands of the child,
right,
or the young adult.
Mm-hmm. One parent is asking, how do you as the parent remember to reset the magnet boards?
Okay, good question. I set the system up so I don't have to reset it. So if I can maybe jump back to, this was an intentional thing on my part because I knew I wouldn't, I would not remember. So all it is I'll focus on, I don't know, can you see my cursor at all?
No.
Does it show up as a pointer? No. Okay, so then I won't bother pointing. But if you see the example on the left-hand side, the magnets are all there. They all start on the left. And so on morning A, they just one by one move the magnets over to the right. And then the magnets stay there on the right side. On morning B, they just move them back to the left. So the only resetting is any things that are left behind on the original side. If the child didn't do it or they didn't move their magnets, they move them back to start with a clean slate the next morning, or I might do it if I'm standing at the fridge in the middle of the day. But that's almost a non-issue when you just have them going one way one morning and then back the next morning. And same thing with the example on the right, we shifted the orientation. And then, in this example, they all start, first of all, child 1 is the red tape. And then child 2 is the pink tape. And so for morning, for example, they would move their magnets from the top down to the bottom. Then they stay there. And then next morning, they move from the bottom back up to the top. So there's no resetting necessary.
Okay.
I appreciate that point of clarification, because I feel like that is that would be a bottleneck that would prevent me from being successful with it, that I would not comply with, and then my child would not be successful with.
Yes. Several parents have asked with the magnets, and then I'll go to the folders. They wondered if it's appropriate for a teen. They feel it might be a little youngish for them, and perhaps there's a fall off in terms of when the child hits teenagehood. I don't know. You have the experience.
Yeah. I do use it with my teenager. Part of it is we've been using it for a while. So there could be, introducing it to teenage years you might get some resistance. I think the biggest issue is what you're seeing right now with my sample are magnets that I set up with little pictures on them, because at the time I took this photograph and my daughter was still in kindergarten and wasn't reading. So, I think it's all about how it looks. You can get a little more streamlined magnet board. You can use thinner pieces of tape and not use the pictures. I'm looking right now at my refrigerator with all the magnets on it. They've changed over the years. They don't look like this anymore. Mm-hmm. But it's partially how it looks, and also it's in how you manage it and how you share it with them. If you share with them, this is so we can all be more successful. So I don't have to be nagging you every morning. And this is just a reminder. Frankly, I used magnets for a while myself. We moved and I didn't have the same spot in my bathroom to put them, so I never got it back up. But I used it myself because I hate mornings. That's why my bio says I manage ADHD mornings. I have to manage them for myself as much as for my kids. So it's largely going to be in how you present it to them. And if it's presented as sort of a shared tool, a reduction in nagging, making that invisible visible, that's a really good line maybe to use with them. Then I think that you might find they might be a little more receptive than you think. When they see the value in something, they're usually pretty receptive. And I find that with a lot of these things that make the invisible visible, students of all ages are more receptive than you might expect. Mm-hmm.
Okay, lots of questions about the folders. We'll move to that. Our school, one parent writes, our school has been very clear that a single binder is not allowed and we must use different binders, notebooks for each class. Do you have suggestions for navigating that system? It's a tough one.
Boy. Yeah, that is a tough one. The best thing there's a couple things that come to mind. This could be, it feels like it shouldn't have to be, but with that situation you're saying, this could be a 504 or IEP accommodation. Mm-hmm. We honestly, it's interesting. We have when we get some resistance over the binder, it almost never comes from the students. It will come from teachers. And so on our website, we have put together a video to explain the brain biology of why the binder is so much more brain friendly for students. So if you go to studyskills.com and you search brain friendly binder, it'll take you to a blog post it's an article and there's a video. And that might be, just sort of petition and see what you can do. Beyond that, I mean, it really is not doing the students a service to have so many, no matter whether they have ADHD or not. One parent made the comparison to me. She says, all those different folders and notebooks for our kids, she says, that would be the equivalent of us having 12 different email inboxes to manage. And I thought it was a perfect comparison. Right. So we really need to be educating the school on why this traditional system is not supporting anybody. And if they find that if they could use one binder, they will find, hands down, they will find compliance with turning work in will skyrocket. Mm-hmm. It's the number one reason why papers are not turned in, why there's missing assignments, is the students just cannot manage all of those different materials effectively.
Mm-hmm. Have you personally seen it being the one binder being written into a 504 plan? I mean,
yes.
Okay. Because several parents have asked, can I put this in a 504 plan?
Yes, okay. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, it's a strategy. Well, anything that supports children with ADHD or learning disabilities, when it's optimal for them, it's optimal for everybody. But you absolutely should have the right to put that in a 504.
Mm-hmm. One parent is asking, how do you recommend we deal with the huge bulk of stuff that the kids accumulate in those folders? Is there a clearing out process that you sort of institute or make a routine?
When the first thing is to have a designated place at home where the overflow can go. And that can be, it can be anything, as long as it's a designated place. I always say it could be a pizza box, as long as the pizza box is clean. I don't recommend the pizza box as an optimal way, but I just use that as, to make the point that it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It just needs to be a designated location. It can be a Pendaflex folder. One of my favorites are the Pendaflex folders that hang on the wall. They're very colorful, but they do cost a little money, $15. Sometimes that's very accessible to families, sometimes not. But just when that binder starts to get a little full, it becomes very obvious. And hey, let's just take a few minutes to pull everything out and put it into our at-home paper station or file folder or whatever you want to call it. So yes, I do recommend that you have a place at home for the overflow. I always recommend that students hold on to all of their papers until they get their grade on their report card. I've been recommending this for years, and just last year we ran into this with my son where he got an A in math. We got the report card and there was a C on the report card. And the only way that he was able to get that grade changed was he had all of his work in that take-home folder that, that we could go back and say, look, there's this, it's graded. This is done.
Yeah, right.
So it was a data entry error, but those things happen. And if you don't have your information, then it's your word against the school's word. So
right. One parent is asking, all of my son's assignments are now online. There is no paper to organize. How can he keep track without these visual cues?
Okay. That's an excellent question. I do still recommend a binder. You might even be able to get away with a 1/2 inch, but there's always some papers. Even when there's no papers, even if there's 4 papers, there's always something that they need to print or whatever. So first of all, they're going to need a place for those things. So I still recommend the binder, but I understand the nature of the question it's just how do you handle all the digital stuff? Because they're always going to need a place for some paper. Get the child set with the binder, have them set up the subject area folders, that take home folder in the front, and then set up the digital folders to match. So if I go here to, basically to emphasize that we're going to set up our digital folder to match the structure of the binder. One file folder is the equivalent, this master file folder here for the school year is the equivalent of the binder. And then one subject area folder. And the name for these subject area folders should be, here's an example here on the screen, the school year and then the subject. The reason you do this is because after a couple of years, you'll have multiple math and science folders. You won't know what school year they're from.
Right.
And when they can set up the tangible binder first and then set up the digital files and it's presented in this way that the two match each other, then that's helpful. That helps to make that organization more visible to the student. And then it might even be useful to have I didn't even think of this until just now with this question, so I appreciate the question. Maybe one of these folders is a to-do folder. And any digital files that the child is actively working on stays in there. They'd have to remember to move it from that folder to their subject area folder when they're done, but that could be very helpful for them to just keep all their digital files that they're currently working on in one place. Or a shortcut. If you know how to make shortcuts, that would make the most sense to put shortcuts into the to-do folder. But you got to weigh out. You don't want a system that's too complex that they won't comply. So
exactly, right.
At the very least, this file structure coordinated with a binder does really help them internalize how it all should be ordered.
There's just a basic question about labeling an email, and then another one. What is labeling an email? I mean, someone is asking.
Okay, very good. So in Gmail, I'll come down here. Forgive me while I just get to the right slide here.
Sure.
Okay, so in Gmail, the term label is, it's like a tag. It's equivalent to a tag or used in place of a file folder. So with digital files, we can only store the digital file in one file folder. So we have to pick what folder makes the most sense. Labels are the equivalent of that, but they're not called a file folder because you can put multiple labels on one email. So I hope I've explain that. Or tags.
Yes. Right.
Label or tag are interchangeable.
Okay. The follow-up to that is, in the labeling scenario, do you recommend using subfolders also? Or where would that labeled email go?
Okay, very good. So I follow the same structure as the digital files. So my kids have a label for the school year, a master label for the school year, and then they have labels that have the same exact name as their digital file labels.
Mm-hmm.
So that's as far as I would go. I would not go any further than that one layer, the school year and the subject folder, and then that's it. No more layers. You can get crazy with the folders and the tags and the labels.
Right. And once again, what's the snooze? I guess they're what's the snooze? Just quickly.
Sure. Snooze is an option in Gmail.
Okay.
That will you just program when you want that message to reappear in your inbox. So it just takes it out of the inbox, snoozes for a little while, and then it reappears on whatever date and time that you ask it to come back.
Okay. And if the child can't handle that 2-minute option, did you say it becomes a task? Is that where it goes?
Correct.
Okay.
And tasks you might want to leave in the inbox. So there's the visuals there that they still need attention, but you can also set it as a task and leave it in the inbox.
Oh, okay. They wanted to know your website again. I just want to get that in before we leave. So
sure. Studyskills.com.
Okay. And where with all these systems, where does keeping track of homework, completing it, and getting it back, what system would work best for this? The dashboard or?
Frankly, the dashboard's better for schedule type things, not as good for tasks.
Okay.
And that's a question about tasks. Really, a paper planner. A paper planner is the best. Digital planners, there's a lot of distractions between them getting to that digital planner. So a paper planner is what I recommend best. And most of the planners that are distributed through schools are the best option. Use a binder clip as a handle so that they can mark their current page. That's a big bottleneck for students using the planners, that they have to flip through 20 pages to get to the right date. So use a binder clip, not a paper clip, because the paper clips slide off.
Right. Okay. One parent is asking for a few more details on the divider that's being used to divide the subjects in the binder.
Sure.
Maybe she didn't envision it or see it.
Okay. Yep. So there's a picture on the screen of a plastic folder. Sometimes they're called poly folders, binder pockets. Mm-hmm. You go to Amazon or you go to office supply store. Mostly binder pockets or poly folders, I think, are the main terms. Mm-hmm. And it's just a simple folder that goes into the binder. Some of the folders will have pockets on the back side. I don't even use the back side. Sometimes those are cheaper, so you might buy those. But if you use the two pockets, this pocket on the front side and the pocket on the back, in my opinion, that back pocket just gives the child one more place to lose papers or not see them. So I only use that front pocket.
Okay. Well, I think the hour is up or close to being up.
Okay.
Thanks so much for being here, Susan. It was excellent, really. So many
I appreciate that.
People are thanking you for the great ideas.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that feedback, and I wish everyone a very wonderful school year.
And thanks to all of the attendees for joining us. Make sure you don't miss future Attitude webinars, ADHD expert articles, or important research updates by signing up to receive our free email newsletters at attitudemag.com/newsletters. Thanks everyone for being here, and have a great day.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.